I'm anxiety. I'm one of Riley's new emotions, and we are just super jazzed to be here.
Surprising and disappointing in equal measure, Inside Out 2 manages to strike a mostly careful balance with its overstuffed new ensemble, while still failing to live up to the rousing highs of its far superior predecessor. We're talking, of course, about Pixar's Turning Red, a deftly symbolic film that captures the untidy emotions of puberty and adolescent girlhood in a way the studio's Inside Out sequel refuses to. As far as the first Inside Out is concerned, Kelsey Mann's follow-up builds on its concepts with imaginative spark, but finds itself unable to break past its own barriers of logic and metaphor the way Pete Docter's original so powerfully did.
What do you think you're doing? Riley's life is more complex now. It requires more sophisticated emotions than all of you. You just aren't what she needs anymore, Joy.
Riley is now 13 years old and far happier with her new life in the Bay Area. She has a pair of close friends, a hobby playing ice hockey, and a sunny disposition. Her emotions also work in tandem to guide her through most situations. They're represented once again by the lively fairy-esque joy, the stout hot-headed anger, the stringy shaky fear, the broccoli-shaded disgust, and the now more well-adjusted teardrop-shaped sadness. But the mechanisms these characters control has changed. The screenplay harkens back to the first film in numerous ways, but doesn't repeat its specific details. With Riley's core memories presumably set in stone, Joy now leads the charge in protecting Riley's sense of self, a gorgeous flower-like structure delicate like Riley herself, woven from glowing threads representing individual beliefs. Joy, however, still seems to falter by ejecting bad memories to the back of Riley's mind, where they pile up in a faraway void, a skillful foreshadowing of things to come.
We keep the best and toss the rest! Whew.
On the eve of Riley's hockey camp getaway with her pals, puberty suddenly kicks in, represented by sudden construction work in the Emotions Command Center headquarters and a men-at-work type sign that denotes puberty is messy. Beyond a single scene of Riley's new physical insecurities, Inside Out 2 never quite lives up to this obvious truism.
I'm too gross to go anywhere ever again!
But it does introduce an immediate sense of chaos via the arrival of new emotions. The nervous, zippy anxiety, the big, brash embarrassment, the fluid, unflappable ennui, and envy, whose defining characteristic is she's small?
I'm Envy.
Despite cute and committed voice work from Io Adebri, the fourth member of the quartet doesn't have much of a distinct personality or function beyond giving anxiety someone to talk to, since embarrassment and ennui are mostly silent. Oh well, they can't all be winners.
Nope, going high. Oh, you got a real sweaty palm there, buddy.
If there's one thing Inside Out 2 nails, it's the sudden onset of emotional change in early teenhood, embodied by the sheer chaos of 9 characters bickering over a mental control panel meant for 4. How this unfolds is intriguing and feels deeply personal. With anxiety at the wheel working overtime to prepare for every possible outcome, Riley's sense of self begins to change as she tries to impress the older players.
Yeah!
Until her friends no longer recognize her and she no longer recognizes herself. Unfortunately, the way this tale is represented internally is fundamentally uninteresting, even if it proves funny on occasion. The plot practically mirrors Inside Out, in which joy and sadness are ejected from headquarters and have to find their way back. Only this time, they're accompanied by fear, anger, and disgust. The major difference, however, is that the movie never really takes the time to focus on the physical and emotional effects of unforeseen new feelings rising to the fore, whether in Riley's real world or the one inside her head. While Inside Out 2 depicts the sudden, heart-racing stir of anxious thought, along with some meaty internal monologues about Riley's crumbling self-worth, it packs little emotional punch. Where the first film embodied the notion of leaving childhood behind through the death of an imaginary friend, and eventually depicted an act of reconciliation via a child's first brush with the intricacies of powerful mixed feelings, the sequel never really attempts anything of the sort. Though it harps on the supposed greater complexity of the new emotions, its depictions of anxiety, embarrassment, ennui, and envy are, in comparison to joy and sadness, deeply oversimplified in a way that poses storytelling hurdles. Maya Hawke is a delightful addition as anxiety, a nervous, deeply sympathetic antagonist whose goals stem from a love for Riley equaled only by joy, who, in turn, has doubts about her usefulness. Meanwhile, the friendly dynamic between sadness and embarrassment, two emotions who recognize something of themselves in one another, is incredibly sweet.
He's not really big on eye contact or, talking.
However, that's about as deep as Inside Out 2 gets with the emotions' shared journey. By separating them once again, and by keeping the ones that are actually in conflict far apart, we miss out on the kinds of symbolic confrontations that kept Inside Out afloat. In their place, there's a rush to reach its conclusion. Inside Out 2 has a few neat and inventive ideas that make for hearty amusement, including particularly hilarious recurring gags based on early 2000s video games and well-known Nickelodeon properties, but its editing rarely seems to connect Riley's story with that of joy, anxiety, and so forth, whether through movement, match cuts, or contrast. The cause and effect between Riley's actions and the impulses that drive them is usually mentioned, but never fully felt through the image. This is, in a nutshell, the problem with Inside Out 2. It's a smart film, but rarely an emotional one. It has plenty to say about the way one's teenage years give way to changes in personality and to paralyzing new feelings, but it rarely elicits joy, sadness, or any of their cohorts the way the previous film did. And while its catalyst is the onset of puberty, the movie rarely gets intimate or visceral enough to confront the actual reasons that puberty is messy. Not only does it ignore the physical changes tied to the emotional ones, another point in Turning Red's favour, but it also rarely captures the interplay between emotions. It's too neat in its unpacking of adolescence, and too concerned with explaining its metaphors, which are likely to go over younger viewers' heads, rather than letting their effects be felt.
How dare you, madam?
You can't just bottle us up!
Oh, that's a great idea!
While its chaotic new cast serves a clear purpose, Inside Out 2 is more metaphor than meaning. It explains plenty about the confusing emotions associated with puberty, often in intelligent ways, but it rarely lets them be felt or experienced the way its predecessor did. It also fails to live up to Pixar's own high watermarks for emotionally driven tales of adolescence, movies like Luca and Turning Red, so it feels like a step down in several regards. For more movie reviews, check out what we thought of Bad Boys Ride or Die and Atlas, and for everything else, stick with IGN.
It's not forever. It's just until Riley makes varsity, or until she turns 18, or maybe forever. I don't know. We'll have to see. Bye!